Hello.
Hey, good morning. How are you? Well, good
Doing well.
afternoon.
How are you?
What?
You Shundry? Hi, my name's Daniel. Can you? I don't know if my connection's good. I see a wheel spinning.
Hear me okay?
I can hear you now. Yeah, I don't see the wheel spinning anymore.
Okay.
All right. Let me look here. All righty. So we'll go ahead and start the interview. I'm glad we could get in. Glad we could get in. So what brings us together? Who are we? So the word improv community, we are a community of writers who are united by our passion for writing and a common challenge, word improv. And what is word improv? A writing challenge where writers write a story using a set of new words. A story is broadly defined to include a tale, poem, skit, etc. There is no character minimum or limit. You can learn new words and participate in a word improv by following @WordSleuth on Instagram. And what is the purpose of this interview? This part of a series of Pass-the-Baton interviews where contributors to the Word Improv Challenge interview one another so that our community and audience learns about what word improv writers and their work are. So why did you join like the word improv community and how did you join?
That's a good question. I was actually chosen. Lad actually reached out to me due to a live that I did for my readers, and we just connected. And the whole concept behind pass the baton, and using words to create a story, or create something that empowers others. It just made sense. So
Right.
so here we are.
No, I love it. And I was the interviewee a couple weeks ago and the reason I got into it is I've always enjoyed writing and the word improv is a really good outlet, I feel like. And I feel like there's not a lot of really good outlets. So, word improv is a really good one to have.
I would agree with that.
So, the next part of the interview is introducing you. Would you like me to read the bio that you uh, had posted, or would you like to introduce yourself?
No, you have at it. I'm bad
Okay.
with talking about myself. I looked at the bio and I was like, wow, it looks like I did a lot of stuff. So you know, it's like Akeem said in Coming to America. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I will read this for everybody here. Da-da-da. All right. Shundry Patterson writes under the pen name Shun P. Writes. He is an author, poet, genealogist, chef, ancestor-infused long story, and business owner. The head of Edit Cat Consulting, a small boutique publishing and consulting firm. He was born and raised on Chicago's Northwest Side in the legendary grounds of the Noble Square neighborhood. He graduated with a BA in journalism from Columbia College Chicago and earned an MBA from Capella University. His first book, From the Water's Edge, a collection of poetry, Written While Wondering, Volume 1, was dedicated to the memory of his father. In 2021, he published his follow-up effort, From the Water's Edge, Volume 2, which he dedicated to his family, which explored the world via prose and narrative in the clutches of the pandemic. He hosts the podcast As the Incense Burns, which is in its second season. And I apologize, but there's a paragraph that starts with next on his publishing, and it's cut off. I'm not sure if
Okay.
you remember what was in that part, but if you want to share that part.
Yeah. So my next publishing effort is a cookbook.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, that's what everybody says. And it's so this cookbook, this third book, it's going to explore a niche of cooking because I'm a pescatarian. I've been pescatarian for 25 years. So I'm
Okay.
combining um, the poetry of food and linking it to genealogy because food is the food is the one thing that we all have in common as human beings. You know, regardless of creed, class, economic status, we
Right.
all eat. You know, so
Right.
that's the vantage point. That's the meeting place for us to all move forward. And my research as a genealogist, because I've had a part in tracing 200 plus years of my family history and counting.
Wow.
A lot of these stories, a lot of our histories are passed down over the course of a meal.
Right.
You know, so and that's where our defenses are down. That's when we are at truly are at a comfort level when we're having a meal with someone. So this cookbook, it's framed and it's a lot of the recipes are named and dedicated after my family members. So I have, recipes that are named after my dad, after my older brother, after my mom, my sisters, a handful of my cousins. So it's just the linkage of food with poetry and
Okay.
incorporating it with our humanity.
I love that. So it's like a poetry cookbook.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, because
That's
that's what
awesome.
that's what cooking is, you know. But with poetry, and you can attest to this as well. With poetry, with as writers, you know, we're taking words and we're putting them together. Those are our ingredients. We're
Right.
putting them together for human consumption, for the spirit. Whereas
Right.
with food, we're doing that same thing, but we're doing it for the body, doing it
Right.
for both. You know, you're fulfilling a duality of the human spirit, the body and the
Right.
spirit.
Hey, I love that. I love that. That's awesome. And well, that brings us to, the next part, which would be your word improv story. I don't know if
Okay.
you've written multiple, but if you have one that you've picked that you wanted to share.
Yeah, the one that I wrote was I believe it was Word Challenge 11, and I put together a piece called the Pontificating Class, and I took the words legerdemain, parsimony, bluster, alderwoman, subterfuge, and bastion, and what I did was and I wrote this laying in bed, looking at the ceiling. And
Right.
I took these words and what I did is I grouped it together and linked it to a current event. And the current event that I'm touching on is just the, it seems as if we're living, life imitates art. So
Right.
the Handmaiden's Tale. I never got into watching that because I told someone, they were like, hey, you should get into this show. This is interesting. You would love it. And I told them, I was like, you know what? I'll wait for the real life event to happen. And it went over their head. They kind of laughed about it, but this piece is, tied in with women's rights and women losing their autonomy over their bodies. So
Right.
this piece is called The Pontificating Class. Reality dispensed with no rehearsal as the legerdemain of the pontificating class is on full display. Art imitates life, or life doing art. Rights wrested away with nary a delay. Has the owners of the temple, the alderwoman of it, mind you, metaphorically, figuratively, and physically, supremely, have no say about that bastion of them. Clearing phlegm. This ain't pretend. Tapping back in. No domain of their person, their body, I can't call it. But what does that have to do with you?
Mhm.
Control of others to smother the inadequacies of self, the besmirched, using subterfuge of insidious frequencies. Legal tender is how they figure to usher in a parsimony of investing in the spirit, running parallel to minding your own damn business, because it is easier to mind that of others, deadening or deafening to those who can hear it, and doubly so for those daring to withstand the bluster, calamity, and audacity of the pontificating class. That's the piece.
I love that, man. I really do. I cut my jaw, cut my jaw going down a couple times because I don't know, man. It's really like words are just kind of, crazy,
They're
because
projectiles.
you can think about something, and then, but when people hear something and, see a poem or see a book or, anything like that, it's almost like different, So when you put a serious topic in a poetic way, it almost like draws in the right crowd.
I would agree. I would agree. Because it's like a radio station, that words are frequencies.
Yeah,
Everyone isn't going to get that AM or FM station where they're at. And I think a lot
right.
of times we get caught up into trying to reach everybody versus trying to reach the people that we're for.
Yeah,
And that's what I tell a lot of people, a lot of, my clients at my firm, because people often reach out and they, a lot of creatives, and they often say, hey, my friends and family aren't supporting me. They're not reaching out to me. They're not supporting my work. And my response to that is that friends and family are great, but there's 7.7 billion people on the planet that we don't know. And those are the
right,
people that we need to, reach out to. Those are the, that's our audience. And I think we
right,
lose sight of that. So this piece was kind of born of that, because a lot of times, and I just, although I'm not a woman, my thought process, just like I alluded to in the middle of the piece, what does that have to do with you? What
right,
does what does that woman's domain of her body have to do with us
right,
as men, or with anybody that doesn't have anything to do with? And that just kind of leads to the last part. We get more power, or it's easier to exercise power over somebody else versus telling truth to the person that we have to spend every day of our life with.
right. Well, I love that. That that's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, those are the types of messages that people need,
Mm-hmm.
bring it on the
Yeah,
way where people need.
yeah, it's necessary. We're at we're at a precipice. We're like at the point of no
Yeah,
return. It seems like,
right.
with everything that's going on. I think we're at a danger zone where we are talking past each other instead of talking to each other. And it was just
Right.
something I saw with Kanye West, and he made a comment about reading being as distasteful as Brussels sprouts. And I have several recipes with Brussels sprouts in my cookbook. And for anybody that's listening to that, feel free to go on my page and you can look at all of the Brussels sprouts recipes. But
I'll be doing that.
I took offense to that because it's something that my father warned me about. And when he told me at the time, I laughed about it. He told me, he was like, you know what, eventually you're going to live in a world where they start burning books again.
Yeah.
And I laughed at him. He said, history repeats. He's like, you will go through this where people will begin to burn books. And,
Yeah.
sorry, one second. Sorry about that. And here we are. We have people that are proposing to teach our children, because he has a school, but he tore down the very foundation of learning, which is reading. And that's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's frightening. And Brussels sprouts are delicious, man.
For real. So I mean, I don't know. I don't think you should compare anything. I think comparing anything to food is a really touchy area to walk on,
Hmm.
because that just really exposes, like, if you can't cook, because food is food is because somebody likes it, you know what I mean? So somebody can make it good,
Right.
you know.
Exactly.
So, but hey, um, so do you write professionally or as a hobby?
It's professionally. It started. It started as a. I guess it started as a hobby because my pen name. I went with the pen name because the whole logic behind it was like, hey, Samuel Clemens slash Mark Twain did it, so why can't I? And then I
Right,
was kind of going through an imposter syndrome at the time, and I was just like, hey, if I write under a pen name, and if I'm a bad writer, if this stuff sucks, I can go back under the rock and nobody will know. Nobody will be none the wiser. And
right,
it began to take on a life of its own. So on my site, on SeanPWrites.com, I have over 45,000 readers. It's converted into 60 languages.
wow,
And it began to kind of take on a life of its own because when I didn't publish, many of my readers would, reach out to me and ask, hey, what's going on? What's next on the list? So, uh, yeah, it's professional and it's personal. And I think you can attest to it as well. Writing is what defines us. That's our, that's how we convert all of the burdens, all of the angst that we get.
yeah,
It's our biofuel. We take, the garbage that we get and we convert it into something of beauty to give to other
right,
people.
right. And you said that, it started off as a hobby. So how did the hobby start?
Uh, I had so I used to be one of those people that got his identity from his workplace, and I was one of those company guys, and I had a couple of degrees, and I just thought, I'm going to work here at this place until I retire, and then I'll figure out what I'll do later,
Right,
and I ended up getting that reminder that we're all just numbers, we're all just numbers to the corporate monolith, and and I ended up, getting laid off. And my dad told me something that was very prescient. He told me, "This is not what you're supposed to be doing with your hands." And
right.
that was how, I made the segue and I started my blog in 2012, and I kind of taught myself the process, how to build the blog, how to, do the hashtags, how to build my audience, and it just kind of went from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I feel like everybody gets into that, I feel like that's the norm, to get into working or get into, you know, strictly school, you
Right.
know. I feel like a lot of people who, indulge in work in school, there's nothing wrong in indulging, but realizing that you can do more, you
Right.
know, and not
Right.
buying into the you have to dedicate your whole life to this, or you're going to
Exactly.
be like, nothing and have nothing,
Right.
because I mean, everybody has passion and everybody
Hmm.
has something that they're passionate about. And if they know that they can still do that thing while they are, going to school, working, you know, and, for the people who are fortunate enough to have that thing, if they want it to turn into their profession, there you go. But I mean, everybody needs to know that they can have their passion too, and that they're, like he said, your hands aren't meant for that,
Right. Right.
you
And
know?
we lose our way. It's so easy for us to lose our way,
Yeah,
just to take the path less traveled, and that was my issue. My issue was wrestling with imposter syndrome. Like, oh no, I can't do that. This is just too much. That's out of my wheelhouse. But uh, that's when we grow, you know, when we commit to being uncomfortable. And, you know, and that's, you know, that's what I resolved to do. And that's kind of what led me here to this point, and us having this conversation, and, you know, me just having conversations like this with, you know, people in scattered spots all around the world. And it's humbling. It's always
Right.
humbling. You know, I think you may have mentioned it before, because I actually followed your page as well. You never know who you're going to touch, you
Right.
know, and you always think that your words are hollow until someone tells you otherwise.
Right. I mean, those things never go away for, the majority, but it's just, you got to realize that they never go away and just say, okay, that's cool that, you got to, stay true to your, true beliefs and actually stand in that rather than having, negativity overcome.
That's one of that's a theme I often return to. You know, we often tell lies to the person that we have to spend every day of our life with,
Right.
ourselves. You know,
Right.
and nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to admit that they're the biggest hypocrite that they know. But I
Right.
do that. I do that every day, just as that reminder to, you know, for me to level up, you know, from day
Right.
to day, you know, to not be complacent.
Yeah.
Um, and that was something of a part of a theme of a piece that I wrote not too recently, and a part of it was that, you know, we often resign to being divine from 9 to 5. You know, so, you know, we have a time frame where, you know, we're living that truth or living that divinity. Like, okay, you know, I'm going to smile and be happy and serve others from 9 to 5. And then from 5 o'clock on, you know, we forget about that versus it being a 24/7, 365, 366 on leap year. Alfred.
Yeah. No, I mean, really, and I read this self-help book like a couple years ago.
Hmm.
And it was about essentially, not thinking it's too late to do something or too early to do something. And
Exactly.
because you have to do life every day. Just because you're 20 doesn't mean you can't start preparing for your future. And just because you're 60 doesn't mean it's too late to go, write a book or whatever you want to do. And the guy in the
Precisely.
book, he was talking to this lady on a plane, and she was 70 years old. And she said, like, she was doing what she wanted to do then because she didn't want to regret, she regretted the first 70 years of her life, and she didn't want to regret, like, whatever else she got to live, and
Right.
I mean, it's just like, it's never too late to start, it's never too early to start, but you have to, do it every day.
Exactly. Those best laid plans, they always have a mind of their own because, you know, if somebody told me 5 years ago, like, hey man, you're going to have 2 books, you're going to be working on a cookbook, and people are going to be talking about your work, I would have spit water on them. I wouldn't have believed it, you know. And that's
Right.
kind of a testament to, you know, those best laid plans having a mind of their own, you know. And
Right.
and a lot of that was you know, spurred by, you know, my dad's passing, because you know, that was one of those foundational things where I just realized that, hey, you know, I was angry at myself because I never conceived of a world without him in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, just you know, disconnecting, you know, and wallowing in that grief, you know, I was able to, you know, pull that ugliness and convert it into something of beauty, you know.
Definitely, yeah. And that's where, I mean, that's where a lot of the best things come from, is you sharing your story with someone else.
I would agree.
But, and this might be sort of full circle, but we kind of touched on it earlier as well. But, what would you say your writing style is? Is there, several areas?
Oh gosh, I don't know, man. It's it's wherever the spirit moves me. It's a lot of narrative.
Right.
So a lot of my narrative pulls people in. So I kind of lean on what others tell me, because just like with any writer, I'm my own worst critic.
Right.
I put something out and I'm like, oh, this is terrible. But then, someone will tell me something otherwise. So I think, maybe the narrative, emotive is more of my writing, because that's usually the emotion that it elicits from people. Sometimes, with a lot of my poetry, I get a lot of tears, a lot of good tears, not bad tears, but it's
Yeah.
humbling nonetheless.
Right. Definitely. And that also ties into the next question, which is why out of, and I don't know how many of the word improv challenges you have done, but out of
Mhm.
all the ones that you have done, why did you choose to read the one that you chose to read today?
Because this is just like in the headlines, and it's like
Yeah.
unavoidable now. And this is just it's just something that just
Yeah.
it incenses me, you know,
Yeah.
that people that it's it leaves me speechless that
Yeah.
people can the whole theme of personal responsibility and freedom of choice and pursuit of
Yeah.
happiness, it takes a back seat to the domain of women. And that just pisses me off. So that was, so at that time that I, looked at the words, that was just, that's what came to me. So
Yeah.
after I finished the piece, it wasn't until after I finished the piece that I knew what it was about. When I
Yeah.
when I read through it, I was like, oh wow, this is about this whole controversy, involving women not having a say over their bodies. And that's
Right.
how a lot of my work, a lot of the poetry takes shape. It's just I convert the emotions of, whatever is percolating, and I turn it into something of worth. And I'm
Right.
assuming it's something of worth because it's touched a couple of chords with people.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's the people who, you should write for, like we were talking earlier. Because, like, I mean, the majority of people, you hear, some people hear poetry, like, poetry, that's like, nobody's written poetry since the 1700s, Like, people
Right.
don't, like, you get those types of people. And it's like, people don't realize that, people don't realize how much like how much emotion and how much of an actual person is in, just one poem,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
But so, and we talked about, and you mentioned a couple things, and if you wanted to talk about them a little bit more, but we talked about your, the cookbook that you have upcoming. But what have
Mhm.
you written in the past, that you wanted to give a little detail on?
Oh, I get to plug my work. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Well, this is my first book. My first book is From the Water's Edge. Um, this is the book that was dedicated to my dad, and uh,
Yeah.
and my second book is From the Water's Edge, Volume 2. So the interesting backstory behind this: my son took both of these pictures. We were I live in Maryland, so I'm always at the body of some. I'm always at the body of some type of water. There's therapy in water, you know, the baptismal quality, just the smelling of the air. So I do a lot of creating here. Um,
Right.
so um, oh, 1 second. Um, so these are the two books that I've written, and then there was a book that I was writing that I sat on at the time of my dad's passing, which will be my fourth book, and that fourth book is a narrative on my genealogy research. So
Oh, wow.
it's an overview on what I learned and being a part and tracing 2 centuries of my family's history. and that's uh, a subject that's close to my heart because
Yeah.
as a person of color, as an African American man, what is often told is that, if you're trying to do genealogy as a black person in America, that you're wasting your time.
Right.
And I ran into that a lot from outside people, and then even including some people, in my own family. And to, over the course of a decade, just to be a part and mapping out 200 some odd years, along with crossing paths with some of my cousins that have helped me in that effort, it's empowered a lot of people
Yeah.
to, to take on something that they would have discarded. So that's my fourth book, and that book is tentatively called Whispers of My Reflections of an Ancestor Whisperer. That's something that my family. That's a moniker that my family gave me a while ago. They called me the Ancestor
Wow.
Whisperer because dead or alive, if they're related, Sean will find them.
Wow.
That isn't necessarily true, but I found more people than I haven't. So that that's kind of my plate of publishing endeavors. And there's just, with writers, we just have so many irons in the fire that sometimes we take a step back and we look at, a lot of our creative work and we just realize, hey, I have a book here. I have a book here. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. I mean, especially, with your genealogy book, um, things like that, it's writing, but it's also, work and research. Like you said, yeah, with that in particular, it's difficult research, it's
very.
extensive research. And so, like, there's a lot that goes into that. And, I mean, if you want something done, you can get it done, you know what I mean? Like,
Mind over
I
matter. That was like one of my dad's famous sayings. He would always say it, and it would go over my head as a kid. And now I get those echoes where like that's what he was talking about. Okay,
yeah,
he would always tell me it was like, he was one of the greatest manifestors that I knew that I
right.
probably will meet. He would tell me something, and he would just see the doubt on my face, and he would say, "Watch what I tell you." So when my first book came out, it was just like, wow, okay, he did tell me that. Yeah,
Yeah. Man, I mean, like, and like you bring up manifesting. Like manifesting is really, it's just like working.
it is.
It's 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 just like working and knowing that you're gonna get it done. Working without doubt. If you go to, your job, your 9 to 5. You know that you can do the job and you get it done by the end of the day.
Hmm.
So just the same way, the things that you want just in your life, you just have to work for them and know that you're going to get them,
Right.
you know? So, but that's awesome. I mean, yeah, any type of work you want to do, like there's ways to get it done. And even if you got a roadblock somewhere, you could go around it, go
Mhm.
off to the side, take a different leap. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm here for it. My dad told me it was something he told me something that I was something that I would write. It would get turned into a movie, and I laughed about it. And he stopped and said, "Hey, watch what I tell you." So, I'm waiting for it because, ironically enough, my first book came out on what would have been his birthday. It would have been his 70th birthday.
Wow.
And that was something he told me in our last conversation. He told me like, "Hey, I give you a tap on the other side to let you know I'm okay." When my book came out, and my first book was supposed to come out in October, but it came out on his birthday on July the 2nd. And I
Oh,
remember that. I was like, oh, wow. He did tell me he would give me a tap on the other side to let me know.
he said he's doing it right now.
Right. Uh,
Um,
so that brought a lot of laughter to me. Laughter
yeah,
versus tears because, that was one of those instances that, let me know that, love is energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It merely changes form.
yeah. No, and that's one thing you always have to remember, and just always have to embrace it.
Agreed.
But and so we talked about your cookbook earlier, so I'll rephrase this question a little bit because I thought of something interesting.
Uh-huh.
What would be like a bucket list project for you to work on as a, I don't know if you do anything other than writing as far as, creativity. I don't know if you do like artwork or any movie media type things, but anything creative that as like a creator that you got on your bucket list.
I am working on doing some voiceover for my work. A friend of mine and a couple of readers, actually, a lot of my readers told me that I need to commit to doing that. So that's like one of the things on my bucket list as far as like, doing an audio book of selected readings from my book. So that's on my bucket list, and also setting up a YouTube channel for my cooking and just kind of taking people through the process. That's on the bucket list as well. So I get all of these epiphanies when I'm out walking along the water. That's like when I get my downloads. So now that you ask me that, I'll probably get another couple. But it's a long bucket list, man. It's a long bucket list, but the one thing that just keeps me going is that, hey, we're here on borrowed time.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not something, it's something that, I mean, you can look at it as, you could take the point of view of I have to complete this and I'm going to complete this and I'm going to do the whole bucket list. Or you could, take it more relaxed and say, like, this isn't something that I have to complete, but this is something that I'm going to, like, not rest until I complete or, don't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, you always got to have, passions, dreams, and, have some unrealistic dreams and, know they're unrealistic, but everything's unrealistic.
Speaking of
So,
unrealistic, you brought up something, and I'm glad we have an audience for this. My one bucket list. Now I have a dream job. My one dream job is like to be the poet laureate of the United States. And I was like, okay, let's aim a little lower. I would like to be the poet laureate of Maryland, and they have a gubernatorial election coming up this November. So I'm in the process of just making it known that I would like this job, that I would like to be the poet laureate of Maryland because it just makes sense. I live in Maryland. I wrote 2 books on the water's edge of Maryland. So hey, you know,
but now what
hey,
is
what's
that
more?
job? I've never heard of that.
So basically, it's like the poet laureate of Maryland, or each state has a poet laureate, if I'm not mistaken. You basically serve as the poet of the state, and
Oh, that's great.
yeah. So I just think, hello, Westmore, if you win this election, hey, holla
That's
at your man.
awesome.
I would that's my big bucket list item, and that's something that my dad mentioned. He's like, hey man, I see you with your name up in lights somewhere. You writing, you using your hand, you showing people how to do something. So that's my bucket list. So, if anybody's watching this, they want to tap Westmore or the guy that's running against them, which is a whole nother story, then hey, do a name drop. But that's my bucket list. That's my big bucket list item. I want to be the poet laureate of Maryland or the
I love
United
that.
States.
That's a good one to have. That's a good one on the bucket list. That's worthwhile. I like that.
Yeah, me too. So hopefully somebody sees that, or he sees and it says, hey, you know what? That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this is the end of the kind of structured interview. I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to talk about, or if if you were ready to close the interview.
No, I think we've touched on everything, man. I've done my selfless, plugging of my books. And then, I also do a lot of reels. The last thing that I'll probably mention, people often see my food reels. I do reels of food, and all of the dishes that are on my Instagram page, I've created those with my own hands. And there's lots of music tied in to that. that's my son's music. You know, so I
Okay.
use my son's music layered into that, and people think, "Oh, wow, you're a musician. You created that." I have no music ability whatsoever. They'd like skipped over me and got into my son. So
Hey.
that's another useless side plug. You know, dad plugging his
Hey,
son.
you created your son. Take credit.
Well,
Check, check out my son.
I was half of the equation, but you know, that's one of those. You know, my son's one of my greatest teachers. So, um, you know, we often get caught up into thinking that a teacher is someone that's an elder or someone of that sort. But you know, as a father, um, those people that teach you that it's something greater than you, those are your greatest teachers. Our children are our greatest teachers. So that's kind of the tie-in.
100%. I definitely agree with that. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview today. I was a little anxious about being the interviewer, and we've had a great conversation. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah,
So,
same here.
uh,
We had a little difficulty with signing in this morning, this afternoon, but this has been good, man. I look forward to keeping it going because it looks like I'll be up next to do this in the following week, man. So we'll keep it going, man, and we'll keep reaching people and you know, hopefully inspiring people to you know embrace their humanity at a deeper level, man. Because you know we're at the point of no return and we need to do better.
yeah, so I definitely agree with that. I'm on board with that. I'm definitely glad we had our interview today. You will be the next interviewer. I don't know if Vlad has told you any date or time, but uh, he will tell you. Um, so if you know anybody, you know, who you think would benefit from following the Word Sleuth page or, you know, doing a word improv interview, reach out to them. They could be the person you interview if somebody hasn't already been picked. Or, you know, they could just get in the community. All great things there. And, you know, myself, follow Sean. And, you have any other social media or anything you wanted to provide or anything like that?
Um, I am any people can just search Sean P. Wrights on Google, on Bing, or you know whatever your search engine of choice, and they will find anything pertaining to me, namely books. You know, because independent authors, you know, hey, again, there's 7.7 billion people on the planet, so I know everybody has a book. So you do Sean P. Wrights, you'll find me. YouTube, Twitter, my webpage, you know, everything you need.
Okay,
But
awesome.
man, it's been a pleasure, man. Pleasure and an honor.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed, you know, and to Vlad, I know you're in here. I've really enjoyed, you know, the whole process, being the interviewee, being the interviewer. I've enjoyed our interview today, and thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Pleasure, man. Hey, I'll see you on paper, man.
All right. Hey, thank you guys. Goodbye.
Hey, take care, man.
You too. Goodbye.